Hello, and welcome to this first look webinar for RAD Studio XE8. Today is April 9th, 2015, and I'm JT, Senior Director of Developer Products here at Embarcadero. Today, myself and the RAD Studio Product Management team, including Serena DuPont, Marco Cantu, and Luis Navarro, are going to walk you through some of the great new features and benefits that are being delivered in RAD Studio XE8. So today we're happy to introduce to you the new RAD Studio XE8, and of course this means that there's a new Delphi version XE8 and C++ Builder XE8. So let's start with an overview, and then I'll ask Serena to jump into some key features, as well as Marco and Luis, and then I'll come back to wrap up the conversation. I'd like to start with just a discussion about the market and the view of developers with regard to some of the requirements and challenges that as software developers we're all facing today. About 12 months ago, we commissioned an independent study through Dimensional Research to talk to professional Windows developers. Some of you may have participated in that study. And this was a worldwide study where we asked Windows developers about their continued Windows development and about how mobile may be affecting that. And some of the key findings from this I think are really interesting, but what I'm going to focus on is the fact that as Windows developers today, the majority of you are being asked to support mobile operating systems. 83% are being asked to support Android, and 63% are being asked to support iOS. So this means, and what I hear from almost every other developer too, is that you actually can't make a choice between the two. You really need to support both in order to be successful and competitive with your applications today. Additionally, we asked the Windows developers, well, what does this mean with regards to continued Windows application development? And the answer to that was a resounding yes, we will continue to build and support applications on Windows. 99% of you guys said Windows is here to stay and we're going to continue to support it. So given that situation, plus the requirements to support both Android and iOS, really what we have is a situation where as Windows developers, you're actually all cross-platform developers. You have to support at least 3 completely different operating systems today to stay competitive in this market today. Towards the end of last year and here in January, we published another report, again done through independent survey company Dimensional Research. And in this one, we wanted to understand the impact of the Internet of Things on your development plans. And there was a lot of really interesting information that was being shared with us. Again, asking developers specifically who are working on projects, are you working on projects today? In 2014, that answer was less than 25%. In 2015, the answer is over 75% of you guys are adding some type of IoT device or gadget into your solution today. Additionally, we were told that the development teams, the product teams that were delivering these solutions expect that to have a real business impact this year. So 2015 really is the year when IoT is going to have an impact on your software development. The other thing that was really interesting too was that only 16% of you said we're going to build an IoT solution that targets consumers specifically. So that means 84% of you are building solutions for business, for industry, for enterprise. 2015 is the year not only when IoT is going to have a business impact, but when it also becomes critical for business success. The last thing that we found, and this is the one that I really wanted to share with you today, is that an IoT solution isn't just about the thing, whatever that is. And it's not just about one connection with that thing. If you have an IoT gadget that talks to a mobile device, that's interesting and it has some value, but it's a pretty specific use, generally focused on the consumer experience, because just that consumer is going to have that data from that device or gadget with which to interact. But for those of you that are building business solutions, things become a new part of your infrastructure. They become connected to not only mobile apps, but also desktop apps. Almost 70% of you said desktop apps are going to interact with this IoT gadget, with this thing. IoT information has to live in databases or in cloud services. It will be part of enterprise applications. It will be, the data flow will be managed through middleware or will interact with other IoT devices. So IoT solutions that are being built here in 2015 really are distributed and connected apps. This connectedness is really the key to delivering a solution within which a thing can add some value, whether it's providing data into your solution or whether you're sending it information to display within the environment within which it's deployed. So starting with that kind of interesting market information and you as Windows developers telling us how is mobile affecting us, how is IoT affecting us, we've been designing our roadmap and our product around solving these kinds of challenges. So why RAD Studio? How does RAD Studio help you solve these challenges? Well, RAD Studio does it really in three key ways. One, it's a connected app platform, and it includes Windows and beyond. So Windows is still a central point, a critical part of your development infrastructure and your deployment infrastructure. But the key here is it's all about connectedness, connecting those desktops to mobile, connecting those desktops to things, connecting those desktops to cloud services and or enterprise services. And for that matter, all these tiers can interact with one another and can interconnect with one another. The other thing that RAD Studio does extremely well is it allows you to target the major operating systems that you need to target today, including Windows, Mac, iOS, and Android, with a common source code base, not just for your application logic, data access, cloud service access, but also for your user interface. That's one of the bigger challenges mobile developers have today. And this extends also into middleware and into Internet of Things. So RAD Studio really delivers a full end-to-end solution for you to build a connected app that includes Windows and beyond. And finally, we want to just highlight the particular benefit that RAD Studio provides in building industrial strength and business-ready applications. Industrial strength and business-ready means that developers are using our tools today to build apps that are driving business, that are driving industry, that are driving solutions that make an enterprise function. And so professional developers are using our solution to build apps that are meant to be industrial strength. They are part of the success, or in creating the success, of pretty much every type of business out there. So you need a very robust, full-featured, and productive environment in order to deliver these types of solutions. Certainly you can use it to build App Store apps, but the majority of our customers are using it to deliver App Store apps and build and primarily build solutions that run within their enterprise, that run within their business, and that drive the actual function of their business. So RAD Studio's had a long history of developers being able to deliver these types of solutions into their businesses and enterprises. At a high level, today we're going to focus really on three key features and benefits. Although we're going to share a bunch of feature information with you, I want you to remember these three key benefits. One is about connected app platform, extending your Windows apps with mobile, extending your Windows apps with cloud and middleware, and extending your Windows apps with IoT. So this is a connected app platform. The other area where I want you to think about some additional benefit and value is that we're delivering some solutions to help you understand and analyze end user behavior. And then finally, big focus in this release has been on increasing developer productivity in many different ways, but also very specifically in the editor itself, where you spend a lot of your time writing code. So what do we mean again by the connected app platform? What we mean is connecting and interconnecting native client platforms, mobile platforms, smart devices, and this could be a smartwatch or Google Glass or some type of wearable. It could be a IoT gadget that sits out in a manufacturing floor or in a retail space. It could be an actual physical piece of equipment that now you can provide or get access to APIs to interact with that piece of equipment. It includes cloud services and enterprise access through middleware, as well as embedded data. So this future platform is an interconnected platform where each of these different tiers, this application tier, can have data flow in between all of these different elements and present this information amongst different tiers as well. So this is truly a connected and distributed approach to building modern apps. RAD Studio XE8 is multi-device. It's inherently designed to help you as a developer manage your source code to build applications for multiple operating systems and do it in a single source way. And what we mean by that is you manage one source code base because you have a common API that you can use across all these platforms for pretty much anything you need to deliver in your application. You can always, of course, call down to a specific API if you need to, but for the most part, this full-featured framework offers component wrappers and APIs that you can use to deliver a common app, a very full-featured common app across Windows, Mac OS X, iOS, and Android. And also helping you deal with multiple form factors, the differences between a phone and landscape or portrait and a tablet and landscape mode versus a watch, a smartwatch, like the upcoming Apple Watch and Android Wear watches out there. Or for that matter, various form factors you may be working with on the desktop, or in some type of new visualization gadget that's part of your IoT integration. Think about something like a display that can be provided on a window within your home or within your business. So these are new ways in which information can be presented that is also part of IoT, and also, again, now part of your overall solution, how you visualize that information and how you gather that information. And that takes us to IoT ready. Internet of Things is a big topic. It is all sorts of cool promises, all sorts of really cool gadgets that do one very specific thing. And that one very specific thing depends on what the purpose of that IoT gadget is. These gadgets and IoT devices are endpoints within which you need to interact. And the way you interact with that is through APIs. But those APIs can be presented in many different ways. They can be presented to you via a Bluetooth LE connection, and you have to use a gap profile to parse the data stream to get the information out of it. It could be a REST API that's provided to you over Wi-Fi or the network that talks directly to the device, or maybe it's a cloud service that provides that information. It can be an SDK that you need to talk to in order to interact with that gadget. It could be a TCP connection that you have to make to directly connect to it and spend old-style AT commands back and forth. So IoT has many different ways to interconnect, and with RAD Studio XE8, all those core technologies, both in terms of communication protocols and in terms of API access, are provided to you in this release. And as we move forward, we'll do more and more to create easier ways to interact with IoT. In XE8, in addition to being able to access any of these gadgets through the specific communication protocol and through the specific API delivery, we've also added support in this release for things like proximity awareness, working directly with Bluetooth LE devices called proximity beacons, as well as other devices and other sensors that you may be using for data collection. So IoT is a really exciting aspect of software development. I think it's poised to have some of the biggest impact on computing and the way people interact with applications than almost any technology we've seen in the last 20 or 30 years. And it's up to you as a developer to make this a reality. That's what's really exciting for me as a software developer myself. IoT gadgets by themselves are fun and interesting and have inherent value in them, but to really get the value out of them, you need to share that data. You need to collect that data, keep it in a common place, analyze that data, and do something with it. Let's use a simple example of a retail establishment that may be tracking you as a shopper. And because it's collecting information through proximity beacons or other IoT gadgets about your interaction with the environment, for example, walking past the shoe department several times in the last few months, it keeps us back in data and knows the next time I run past it that this is a good time to send that person a coupon because he obviously wants a pair of shoes and is waiting for a deal. So this is contextual information, and the way that you get that information is by capturing it and storing it in a central location where it can be analyzed and can be used to understand whatever it is that you're trying to track within your environment. And the way to do that today really is through some type of middleware. Middleware matters, let me put it this way, middleware matters again. It's a way to have a common way to deliver information from many different client sources into a back-end database or data store so that you can do something with it. And this is why we built EMS, Enterprise Mobility Services middleware. And the kinds of things that you need to do with this is, one, you need to publish APIs, because the APIs that you present through that middleware is how you build a custom solution to integrate all these gadgets and devices into your solution. You need to be able to manage users and access control. You need to be able to access your enterprise data. And you need to also be able to analyze how people are interacting with that application. So Enterprise Mobility Services delivers all these features in this release, and some really nice new ones too that Marco's going to go through a little bit later. But think about your application architecture going forward and why and where middleware fits within that solution. Lastly, RAD Studio XE8 is designed by developers for developers. It focuses on the function that you need to perform on a daily basis. You need to be able to write to code. You need to be able to debug that code. You need to be able to visually generate and create your user interfaces. You need to be able to connect all these pieces together. So RAD Studio XE8 is built around the express purpose of making you a more productive software developer and delivering your solutions faster than your competitors and with more features than your competitors. So before I turn this over to Serena, I'd like to share at least a demo of one of the new features in this release, and that's a new 64-bit compiler for iOS. This compiler is required to build an application that can be submitted to the Apple App Store. The Apple App Store now requires any new application submitted to the App Store includes at least a 64-bit executable, but you can also deliver a 32-bit and 64-bit in a universal bundle. So let me just take a quick moment to jump over to the RAD Studio XE8 IDE and show you an example of building and deploying a 64-bit executable. Okay, so here we are in the new RAD Studio XE8 IDE. You'll notice a new look and feel here. We're putting a lot more information for you also into the welcome screen here, including a nice Start Here page, page for getting access to the tutorials, getting access to additional code samples, and directly to the documentation. So why don't we go ahead and start by creating a new multi-device Delphi application. I'm going to create a master detail application. I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it MDIOS64. And we're going to go ahead and get in here. So this is a template that creates a master detail for me. Over here we have our available platforms, and you'll see a new choice here, the 64-bit iOS device. So I'll go ahead and select that. We'll see that my phone is selected as the target, and we're ready to build and deploy. So the 64-bit compiler is compiling and linking this application and is creating a bundle for me to deploy onto my device. So the new iOS 64-bit compiler and toolchain includes linkers and toolchain to build separate iOS 64-bit targets with both Abstract Pascal and C++. It supports the Apple Universal App Bundle, so both binaries can live in a single IPA, and that means the 64-bit target can include a 32-bit binary as well. To enable the universal apps, you basically will go into your project options or tools options. Under compiling, you will generate a iOS universal binary. And you'll see here where this has been deployed to the actual iTunes App Store. The Connect info shows both ARM v7 and ARM 64 as supported architectures in that release. So with that, I'd like to pass it over to Serena to walk us through some of the amazing new features that have been delivered within the FireMonkey platform here in RAD Studio XE8. Serena?
Thanks, JT. I'm really excited to go over the key new features and enhancements that we made to the FireMonkey platform in RAD Studio XE8. Now, the FireMonkey platform provides a single-source multi-device architecture, allowing you to build natively compiled applications for Windows, Mac, Android, and iOS. And this includes user interface controls that can be styled or rendered as platform native controls. We provide multiple compilers for the different platforms that all produce native code across Windows, Mac, Android, and iOS. Now in RAD Studio XE7, we introduced the FireUI Multi-Device Designer. Now, the FireUI Multi-Device Designer makes it easy to create user interfaces across multiple devices using a master form to share all the user interface code, and then allows you to optimize inherited views for each target platform and device. And this really makes it easy to customize your application for a particular form factor or device. And the Multi-Device Designer provides a set of predefined views including Windows Desktop, Surface Pro Tablet, Mac Desktop, iPhone, iPad, Android tablets and smartphones, and also wearables like smartwatches. In addition, you can also create your own package for a custom device, for example, that you can install into the IDE. It will then appear as a view from the drop-down menu in the IDE that you can then select and customize your application for. So if you have a specific target device, for example, that is deployed within your enterprise and you want to customize the user interface for that particular device, you could create your own custom view so that you can design the application for that particular form factor. Now in RAD Studio XE8, we added the multi-device preview feature. And the multi-device preview provides you with a design time side-by-side view comparing your app's user interface over different form factors on multiple platforms, all within one window. And this provides you a quick, at-a-glance preview of what that user interface is going to look like across multiple devices, all at once as you're actually building it. And that's really a great advantage with the multi-device preview. You not only get to preview your application across multiple target devices and also platforms, but you get to see the changes you're making to your form live right within the multi-device preview as you're making the changes. So you can really see how you should optimize for a specific form factor depending on the changes that you're making to your form by having a look at the multi-device preview as you're making those changes. Now, the multi-device preview window shows you a preview of the current active form across all the selected devices. It also provides multiple different modes, so you can zoom in to see a detailed view of a specific device, or you can choose from different view modes to change the presentation of the devices in the multi-device preview window. Now, let's have a look at the multi-device preview functionality in action. So here you can see my Employee HR Manager demo application, and I have my master form here, as you can see on screen, and I've created 6 different views, one for Windows Desktop, one for iPad, one for iPhone 4.7-inch, which is the iPhone 6, one for an iPhone 5.5-inch, which is the iPhone 6 Plus, one for an Android 10-inch tablet, and one for an Android 4-inch phone. I'm going to go back to the master. And I have my multi-device preview here. I can either view it as a docked panel, as you can see here, a docked window. I can also display it as a floating window, and that allows me to display my multi-device preview window on a separate monitor, for example. Now, views that I created inside the Fire UI multi-device designer are shown and indicated on the multi-device preview with a check mark. So for example here I created a Windows desktop view, and you can see that's indicated with a check mark inside the multi-device preview. Now you can choose from many different display modes. Mosaic, for example, is one of them. And you can, of course, zoom in and zoom out to get a better view of the form that you're designing on that particular target device or preview device in this case. We also have a flow layout. You can easily choose from a range of available preview devices. So Moto 360 watch, for example, Samsung Galaxy S2, etc. And you can display your form on as many devices as you want, and you can easily add your own preview devices. And you can add your own preview devices via the Device Manager. So you just go to Tools Options, and we go to the Device Manager. And here I added a Moto 360. When I added it, I just gave it the device name Moto 360. That is the device name that's shown inside the multi-device preview. Platform, of course, is Android because it's an Android watch. Form factor is a watch. Then you just load in your device background, and you define the screen upper left corner to define the form size for this, and of course also the screen size. And then you have the Moto 360 added as a preview device. Now, any changes that you're making on the form itself, and I'll go back to the master in this case, will be reflected within the multi-device preview as well. So for example, if I change the employee profile title here, the label, to say employee profile info, and you can see that the text change we made here to employee profile info is also reflected on that particular preview device as well. So now let's have a look at some of the other great features that we added to the FireMonkey platform in XE8. Now let's have a look at some of the great new XE8 mobile features that we added. For maps, we added a new map view component. This allows you to leverage maps within your applications. On Android, this uses Google Maps, and on iOS, this uses MapKit. FireMonkey's underlying visual control architecture has also been significantly overhauled in XE8 to enable multiple presentation implementations per control called control types. And this allows you to select whether a control will be implemented at runtime by FireMonkey's GPU-driven rendering or by the underlying operating system. And in XE8, for universal iOS 32-bit and 64-bit apps, 6 key performance-critical controls now have iOS native control types built in. And these native platform control types include T-Edit, T-List-View, T-Memo, T-Switch, T-Calendar, and T-Multiview. And in the future, we're also planning to add platform control types for other operating systems and components. And as you can see here with T-Edit, for example, it can be rendered as a style control using FireMonkey as the underlying renderer, or as a platform control using iOS as the underlying renderer, as you can see in the screenshot here. And that is enabled via a control type property that you can set on the control in the IDE. Here you can see a screenshot of the map view component. This is a demo that's included with RAD Studio XE8 called the map type selector, showing you how to easily switch between hybrid, satellite, and normal display for your maps in your applications. And as you can see here, an example of the iOS platform controls, you're able to easily switch between a style control. So for example, if you want to use custom UI themes or the premium styles for your applications, or a platform control for the controls such as T-Edit, T-Memo, T-List-View, etc. on iOS. Now, T-List-View also has some additional options for displaying the list in a grouped, indexed, or styled manner. If you select control type platform for T-List-View on iOS, grouped allows you to display your list in a grouped manner, for example, by displaying an item header. Indexed allows you to display your list view with A to Z right-aligned lettering, and you can easily tap on the letter to navigate to that section in your list. And styled allows you to use custom font settings while still using the platform rendering at runtime for T-List View on iOS. Now, other FireMonkey XE8 features include desktop browser component support for Windows and OS X, and those are mapped to the platform browser components. So now you can leverage the T-Web browser component across iOS, Android, Windows, and Mac. We also have a new imageless component that you can use across desktop and mobile, allowing you to work with image collections very easily using the imageless component. And we've also enhanced multimedia and our camera support. And you can see a screenshot of the desktop FireMonkey browser running on Mac and Windows. Now we also have new FireMonkey Premium styles available that are part of the RAD offer, and this includes additional multi-device styles for FireMonkey for iOS, Android, Windows, and Mac. Now in XE8 we also added new features and made enhancements to the RTL for connectivity and the Internet of Things. Now app tethering includes protocol enhancements and encryption hooks, allowing you to utilize your own encryption library with the app tethering components. And for the T-Bluetooth component, we have the T-Bluetooth LE component for low-energy Bluetooth devices, and also a T-Bluetooth component for connecting to classic Bluetooth devices. Also new in XE8 is our support for beacons. The RTL now supports the use of beacons, and we support two available beacon formats, iBeacon, which is a format defined by Apple, and AltBeacon, which is an open format, also known as alternative beacon, that is supported on both Android and iOS. Now, a beacon provides proximity and identification information and informs a mobile app how close it is based on signal strength, and also provides identification information using a UUID, major ID, and minor ID. And again, there's two main standards, the iBeacon standard defined by Apple, and then the AltBeacon standard. Now, with your proximity app, you can find nearby beacons and determine how close your app that is running on your device is to a particular beacon. You can find the identity of the beacon using UUID, major and minor values, enter and exit a beacon range, and take a specific action based on seeing the beacon. The iBeacon standard requires both a major and minor number, and major is designed to identify a group, and the minor number is designed to identify an individual beacon. So for example, let's say you're at a trade show event, and the trade show has 4 exhibit halls. So the major numbers in that case would be 1 through 4 to be used to identify the 4 exhibit halls, and each exhibit hall has 20 different vendors or 20 different booths, so each beacon would be assigned a minor number from 1 to 20. That's just an example of how to work with UUID's major and minor values when identifying beacons. Now the T-Beacon component supports iOS, Android, and OS X, and you can switch between AltBeacons and iBeacons. And then you also have the ability to easily add your own beacons using the monitorized regions property. So let's have a quick look at a demo. Now let's have a look at the new T-Beacon component. And as you can see here, we can choose from iBeacon or AltBeacon. You can also define the monitorized regions, and this allows you to define a collection of beacons to work with. And so here you see I have 4 different ones defined where I set a major and minor number and also the UUID for that particular beacon. Now let's have a look at the code for this demo application here. If we detect that the app is near a beacon using tbeacon proximity.near, then we're going to update the label to indicate the beacon major minor numbers as well as the UUID along with the distance. We can also use the start discovery to scan for available beacons. Now beacons again are supported on iOS, Android, and Mac, and in this case I'm going to deploy this application to my Mac. And here you can see the distance to my beacon as I move around, as well as the nearby beacon info. That is the UUID for the beacon and the major and minor numbers. Now here's an example of the platform control support. And you can see here for T-Memo we have the property called control type that lets you switch between platform and styled. If you select styled, then the control will be implemented at runtime by FireMonkey's GPU-driven rendering, and if you select platform, it will be implemented and rendered using the underlying operating system when deployed to iOS. For tmemo, we also have the data detector type. So for example, if you select phone number and enter a phone number in the memo, then the phone number in the memo will be clickable so that somebody can place a call just by clicking on the phone number. T-edit also has the platform property, so control type platform or styled. The same is also the case for T-switch and T-calendar and T-multiview. Now for T-list view, we have also a control type property that lets you switch between platform, again using the underlying operating system when running on iOS, or GPU, the FireMonkey's GPU rendering system when you select styled. And then for the native options, these are additional list view options that you can use in your applications when deploying to iOS. We have grouped for grouping the items in your list, indexed for displaying A to Z right-aligned indexing so that you can tap on a letter and automatically navigate to that section in your list, and styled. Styled will still allow you to use the underlying operating system for rendering the list on iOS. However, you're able to use custom font settings like you can see here on screen when selecting styled with the control type equals platform setting for T-list view. Now let's have a look at this application on my iOS 64-bit device. So here you can see my platform controls demo application running on my iPhone 6. I can click the phone number, for example, in the T-memo to place a call. I also have the platform rendered T-edit. And I have the platform rendered T-switch. And then if I go to the list here, you can see the list view. I can render it using the style settings from the custom fonts that I had set for T-list view while still using the OS as the underlying renderer. Also indexed for being able to navigate just by tapping on a letter on the right here. And then group for displaying the items in a list in a group manner. And now I'm going to pass the mic to Marco.
Thanks, Arena. This is Marco, and the first thing I want to cover here is runtime library and database support in XE8. For the runtime library, we've added support for Box2D, which is a physics library that is distributed with the product and for which we have created Object Pascal headers to make it ready to use for both C++ Builder and Delphi. The library is great for games, but actually is quite commonly used also in other scenarios, and when you have to mimic something in the real world, it has different physics mechanisms and collision detection, and really allows you to create emulations and simulations of a real world object, as the Box2D testbed that I'm going to demonstrate in a second basically shows. This is a demo that originates with the library and of which we have created Object Pascal translation. This is the main form, and these are the various interfaces for Box2D that are part of this project. This is a FireMonkey application that we can run on Windows here, and we can use it to get a feeling of Box2D. This, for example, is a chain test. So it's the movement of a chain, and you can pause it, single step it, see how it behaves, or just restart and then keep it going. There are many different other demos that you can test. This is one I like quite a bit, which is applying force. You have to apply a force to this object, and you can move them around, and they will just bounce around, but they'll be connected with that cable. And of course, they'll hit into each other and create a real-world simulation of the interaction of these various objects. Again, it's Object Pascal source code version based on the Box2D library. Another very relevant feature, probably even more relevant for the runtime library, is the ability to use a new HTTP client library that supports both HTTP and HTTPS. In the past, Delphi and C++ Builder shipped with support for ID HTTP component, which does work on our platforms and honestly does a pretty good job. But there is a drawback to the Indie HTTP component, which is it requires a custom OpenSSL distribution on several platforms, specifically iOS and Windows. In other words, unless the operating system comes with OpenSSL, which is the case for Android, for example, you have to distribute the security libraries, and we cannot provide them pre-compiled and pre-packaged because of export restrictions. So it becomes, on one side, a little complex for developers to support this scenario, and on the other side, you end up distributing an encryption library, and we've seen over the last couple of years that this library, like most other security layers, is prone to have bugs, and this implies you have to redistribute and re-update your applications to avoid any potential issue. That's why it is really nice to be able to leverage platform APIs. So the security layer is actually provided by the operating system vendor, either Apple, Microsoft, Google, and you don't have to distribute your applications. Now, of course, the drawback of doing that in the past was having to use 4 different APIs, but XE8 provides a single unified HTTP client library that offers both HTTP and HTTPS. So there are basically 2 components, net HTTP client and net HTTP request, and you combine the 2, just provide a few properties, and then you can directly use these components to fetch the data through the HTTP protocol. Again, of course, the Indie HTTP is still shipping with the product, so you can still use it if that's your preference or if you have code relying on it. But we leverage the HTTP request and client for further information, partial downloads, and other advanced HTTP features as well. Of course, this is a cross-platform library, but is also a perfect solution for DCL developers, again, not having to deploy or check the existence of a distribution for OpenSSL on the Windows machine of their customers. Now, what is important to notice about the HTTP client library is that we've started retrofitting some of the existing frameworks with it. So now the REST library and the backend as a service components use the new HTTP client library. Other systems like SOAP and some of the cloud components still rely on Indie HTTP, but we are planning a transition going forward. The last area of the RTL I want to focus on is app analytics. This is a brand new feature that comes in XE8 that helps you capture the usage patterns and usage scenarios of your applications by your customers. So the concept is you just drop a component, you hook it to a platform that we offer and provide, and automatically or with very little effort, you can have a lot of, you can track a lot of information about your customers and how your customers use the application. Now, there is no tracking of user data. There's no individual user reference. The tracking is done with a very generic UID that can even not be persistent from session to session. The goal here is analytics, is have summaries, is have trends, is understanding which features of your applications are used by your customers, not to track individual users or log in or evaluate individual users. There is one component, actually there are 2 components with the same name. They are both called App Analytics. One is for VCL and one is FireMonkey. Now it's unlike other scenarios like with sensors and other components, which is a single component shared by the two libraries. In this case, it's technically two different components because the VCL one hooks to the Windows message loop and the FireMonkey one hooks to the low-level architecture in a completely different ways. There are some operations that are captured by default, or actually there are just one checkbox away, like tracking startup, tracking form activation, or control focus and exceptions. And beyond that, you can just write a single one-liner to add further custom information, like when a given button is pressed, when a menu item is selected, when the user does a specific drag and drop operation in your forms. It's just to name it. There's any individual, any specific action you can capture, give it a name, give it a group, and then get to see the analytics. For the analytics, we are providing a basic account that you can use for testing, and beyond that, the model is a pay-per-use model. So depending on your traffic, you have to pay a runtime fee for using the backend server for the application analytics. Of course, there is nothing to pay for the development or for the deployment. Is the usage volume. And this is a very simple example we tracked using a demo of the application starts and number of users active over roughly a month. And the pie chart has operating system split, so who was actually using Windows 7, Windows 8, or Windows XP during the same time frame. Now, of course, I'm going to do a demo and show you in practice the real analytics server. So this is an almost trivial example of using App Analytics in a VCL application. And all you have to do is to drop this component, write in your application ID, pick some of the options that you want to enable, and that's basically it. And then activate either in code or directly at design time. For creating custom tracking, what you can do is anywhere in your code is just do a track event method, and you have a category and for the event group, and then the specific event you want to track as part of that category. Now you run this application, it's nothing really special, but what happens is that you can actually go to the analytics portal and see when the application was executed and specifically how many times that button was pressed. Of course, user must have the right to bail out of the analytics and disable it. This is a requirement for privacy that we ask you to conform with. But other than that, it's really straightforward, very simple, and you can collect a lot of information about your customers. And this is the information you get from the portal for your application, how many times the application was started and how many different users have been tracked. There are other global information, the version of your application. If you update your version number, of course, you get to know which users are on which version, and operating system version, which is different versions of Windows, Windows 7 or Windows 8, the application was executed on. Custom events are the buttons that have been tracking, and so you can see that button 1 was clicked 27 times over different sessions and over this specific time. Getting to the database side of the RAD Studio XE8, of course the center is and remains FireDAC, high performance, easy to use enterprise database connectivity layer. That's been at the heart of the product for a few releases now, and it's an engine that really makes application development fun again. There are new FireDAC, there's one new FireDAC connection, which is a Teradata connection, and there are several other extensions to the FireDAC library. There are enhancements for databases, specifically for SQLite. There are several new features available. There is support for change notifications, which are mechanisms that different databases use to indicate that there is some new data. And then specifically, there is support for interface change views, which is a new feature of Interface XE8, which allows you to run a query and somehow create a snapshot of the status of the query, and then rerun the same query after any given amount of time, 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day, and only get the delta, get the differences. This becomes relevant if the database is remote and the transmitting the data is a cost. And also lets you merge the existing data you have in memory with the new data coming from the database. There is one other area that is DB Express to FireDuck migration. This is both based on a script that lets you migrate the code from the old component to the new component, but also actually a set of custom built component that provides better compatibility between the two engines that somehow are significantly different behind the scenes in their architecture. So if we add up the various features that are new in XE8, besides the last few things we've seen around FireDuck, there have been some improvements in font scaling and a number of bug fixing. There is connectivity improvements around Bluetooth, app tethering, and this new HTTP client library. There is the new app analytics feature that is available for VCL developers, and that's something we're going to cover later on in this webinar, developer productivity features in the IDE. Plus, there are 2 new VCL styles that have been added to the style pack that makes it even more flexible to create nicer, modern-looking user interfaces for your VCL application. The last part is around EMS in RAD Studio XE8. And here I'm going to focus on a few areas, but mostly cover only one, which is push notifications. EMS is a new feature that was introduced in XE7. It's called Enterprise Mobility Services, and it's a new middleware solution. It's a new multi-tier solution focused on making it very simple, very straightforward to build and deploy this kind of solution. The EMS comes with user management and authentication. You can load custom modules with your own APIs, and these APIs are easy to match to database access, which is provided via FireDuck. There is a web console for users. There is a way to track devices. There is application calls analytics, so API analytics, which is separate from the application usage analytics we've seen earlier. That's part of app analytics. So EMS is your enterprise private cloud. It's hosted by you or on a private cloud. So there is no dependency on a third party for keeping the service running and protecting your data. And it is multi-tier, meaning it has a full multi-tier solution where EMS sitting between your clients and your database or data providers in general. And it's very integrated with RAD Studio, so you can actually build server modules and build clients in a very simple and RAD-driven way, although it's not fully RAD, meaning you actually write code to handle the various REST APIs. The license is a per-user fee with unlimited apps, so you can actually create many applications and deploy on the same server, and you only pay a fee depending on the number of users that are using the system. And that also includes the integration with push notifications, which are the main new feature in EMS for XE8. There are other features like external credential support. We do have a demo showing Active Directory integration for EMS, both server side and client side, and in the management scenario. There are some optimizations, including connection spooling for database connections. There is a new way to export data from the web console, and there is a new client console for managing users, managing accounts, tracking the push notifications, and triggering custom push actions. In RAD Studio, we already had support for receiving push notifications. There was support, as I was mentioning in the past, through Parse and Kindi, but now we have direct integrated support in EMS. EMS supports both broadcast notifications, point-to-point notification, notification to one specific device, and subscription-based notification. So you can sign up for one topic, and then when there is a notification that has that topic connected to it, your device will receive that specific notification. So what the scenario is, you make a REST call to the EMS server, and that REST call can be made from any EMS client, which could be a mobile application, could even be a standard VCL application, could be even a separate server that just triggers the notification. So could be basically any notification written in Delphi or even not written in Delphi, because it's just HTTP REST call you have to execute to hit the EMS server and trigger the actual push notification towards either the Apple or the Google messaging architecture. Now, we don't really have the time to go through an entire demo of push notification with EMS, because that requires easily 10 to 15 minutes, but I already did that a couple of weeks ago, and you can watch the replay on YouTube, or just search for EMS push notification preview, or follow the URL listed here. Basically, the project is just a server that can receive notifications and trigger them. It's enabled in the Google messaging for Android, and I demonstrated a client application working on my phone that could receive notifications both when it was connected, running and not running, and also I demonstrated creating a very simple 2 lines, 2 components VCL application that would just send a notification to the mobile client. So it's a very powerful technology, and it's really worth spending the time to go through this in-depth demo for EMS push notifications. And so that's my section of the webinar, and next is Luis with developer productivity in the IDE.
Thanks, Marco. One of the big benefits of XE8 revolves around delivering more developer productivity than ever, specifically with regard to the everyday activities centered on coding. XE8 delivers over 20 new IDE productivity features. We have added new tools that will help developers to perform tasks easier. In this screenshot, there are listed some of them: intelligent clipboard tools, integrated code metrics, advanced syntax highlighting, and so on. We will back to those in a minute. These productivity features cover both IDE and editor extensions. Right now, most of these enhancements can still be found on a separate menu, but will be integrated seamless in the IDE on future releases. Let's take a look to some of these IDE features. One of them is the project statics, that provides time measurements about the time spent in each part of RAD Studio. For example, editing code, designing, debugging, and others. The results are shown in a graph. The code analysis tools analyzes the code you are working on, measuring 5 key parameters. Clipboard history keeps a record of clipboard contents so developers can paste content previously copied. As mentioned before, the editor has also a bunch of new features. Object Pascal and C++ developers will take profit of improvements like stack bookmarks, smart keys, parenthesis matching, and code structural highlight. For Object Pascal developers, there are even more features. Castelia refactorings with lots of functionality. flow controls highlighting to highlight the use of procedures that interrupt the linear flow execution in your code. Encode navigation toolbar to easily navigate to a method. Or search for a method. Getit is a package manager that allows developers to browse, download, and install Getit packages into RAD Studio, right from the IDE. Starting with the updated TurboPack library for XE8, all kinds of new components, libraries, add-ons, and plugins will keep being added to the Getit package manager. In this slide, you can see how easy it is to find and install third-party components and libraries. Just select a library, accept the license, and install will be completed in a few seconds. Let's see Getit in action. As I said, in Getit, developers can browse for a component or library, and even search for it by name. Or by some keywords. Installation is very easy, just click Install and accept the license agreement. There it is. Library has been installed. And an install process is also done from Getit. All very simple. What is TurboPack? A collection of high-quality, classic open-source components that have been updated for XE7 XE8, sponsored by Embarcadero, and optimized with the latest language and RTL features. Most of the components come from the well-known and trusted TurboPower open-source projects. More information in www.turbopack.net. Another great feature new in XE8 is the integrated unit testing with the UnitX, a modern Delphi unit testing framework. In XE8, we are providing wizards to quickly generate skeleton templates for the test project, and also console and FMX test runners for both Delphi and C++ Builder. The unit runtime is still included in the product for developers that prefer keep using this framework. Anyway, in the Embarcadero wiki is well documented how to convert the unit test to the UnitX. Version control systems have been greatly improved with following items: enhanced subversion support, including change list labels, SVN merge dialog, branches switching, enhanced Git integration with push and pull changes to and from remote repositories, and the brand new Mercurial version control integration with capabilities such as cloning your remote repository, commit changes locally, show log data, etc. Included with XE8, there's a new configuration settings migration tool to migrate configuration of older versions of the product to a newer version. Migrations can take place on the same machine or on different machines. Migrating your existing IDE settings to XE8 is now a simple 4-step wizard. I am going to do a migration example. I'm starting the tool, select to migrate to a newer product version. Now I select RAD Studio XE8, so origin. All the settings has been selected. And now the target, RAD Studio XE8. Click Finish, and it's done. In RAD Studio XE8, there are improved capabilities in editing classes.dex on the Android platform. Developers can easily add custom Java libraries to a project, or remove the standard libraries they no longer need from the project manager. There's still the possibility to create and deploy a classes.dex file manually. And there are more new XE8 IDE features. To mention a few, the CHM help is back, a redesign of the Start Here page, improved installation experience, and project manager enhancements with the support for adding database files and simplifying their deployment. So now I'm going to pass the mic to JT.
Thank you, Luis, and Marco, and Serena. I hope you all enjoyed this walkthrough of RAD Studio XE8, some of the new amazing features and benefits that we're delivering to you. So RAD Studio 8 is ready for you today. RAD Studio XE8 includes the Architect, Ultimate, Enterprise, Professional, and Starter editions, and includes C++ Builder and Delphi, as well as HTML5 Builder, and developer licenses for Interbase XE7. Additionally, a rich set of third-party tools are provided. I'd like to take a moment to close with Update Subscription and tell you a little bit more about this program. Update Subscription, which was formerly known as Support and Maintenance, has additional features and benefits that have been added to it. Like Support and Maintenance, you get access to new releases. Starting in XE8, Update Subscription is required to receive any new updates. So you need Update Subscription in order to get Update 1, for example. But an additional new benefit, which we're really pleased to be able to offer, is that for up to 3 releases in 2 years, you'll be able to continue to receive critical updates and fixes for those recent past releases. So this allows you to stay on an older version for a longer development cycle and still get those critical updates and fixes that you need. Like Support and Maintenance, included is 3 support incidents per developer, but we're offering additional new value in the form of exclusive content with details to be forthcoming in the future. So I highly recommend that you get on Update Subscription and you enjoy the benefits that we're being able to offer with this new program. Out of the gates, a couple of key things to mention here for XE8. We're offering a 10% introductory discount if you buy before June 30th, and our free bonus pack, which includes some amazing new premium styles, particularly around Android Lollipop, as well as Marco's very well-received Object Pascal handbook with some new content added to it as well. So in closing, I'd like to just remind you of some of the key features and benefits in RAD Studio XE8. RAD Studio XE8 is about connecting your apps from your Windows apps, extending them with mobile, extending your Windows apps with cloud and middleware, and with IoT, and building new solutions, new architectures that integrate all of these necessary application tiers and new technologies like IoT. Additionally, XE8 is going to help you understand and analyze your end-user behavior, and it's going to make you more productive than ever. So RAD Studio XE8 is available now, including Delphi XE8 and C++ Builder. And we thank you for spending this time with us this morning, or your afternoon or evening. And we're ready to take some questions and answer some and provide some live answers for you as well. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much for attending this morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are in the world. This is JT. I'm joined in the studio here with Serena DuPont.
Hello.
We also have on the line Marco Cantu, Luis Navarro.
Hi.
as well as Jim McKeith and Stephen Ball.
Hello.
So let's get into some of these questions today. There's quite a bit, yes, there's a lot of new features being delivered here in XE8. So we'll try to go through in a as organized manner as we can. Let me get this mic a little closer to me. One moment. Okay. And we may not be able to answer everything, but certainly do get your answers, or questions I should say, into the questions pane, and we will try to get to them here. We got about probably another 15-20 minutes or so that we can participate in answering questions. We will make this replay available, as well as the questions and answers in the next few days. And so if we don't get to your answer here, or your question here during this part of the session, we certainly will try to do it as a answer within the questions pane here as well. Okay, so real quick, there's been a few people that complained about not being able to get sound. In the future, I would just recommend that you use the rich client. That tends to perform better with regard to playback as well as sound. So it's quite possible, those of you that had those issues, and there was only a few, it's mostly related to using a browser as opposed to the rich client. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and look for a couple questions here. One of the ones that I saw coming up quite a bit was with regard to iOS 64. So iOS 64 is a new platform. This was a requirement that Apple made well after XE7 was released, and was a full platform release. As such, it is an XE8 feature only. This is, again, a reason why I want to stress the value of a program like Update Subscription to get the access to these latest releases, as well as the additional features that we shared with you, or I should say benefits of Update Subscription. Not only do you get new version releases, but you also get, we will be addressing critical bug fixes and hot fixes for older versions as well, up to 2 years and 3 major releases. Someone asked what makes a critical fix. Well, that's decided by a council here within Embarcadero. Generally speaking, it's going to be a bug that affects the ability for you to run your application. Like we're talking crash bugs, generally speaking, but it will be something that we will take bug reports on, and we will consider addressing in regular patch updates for those older versions as we put out updates for the current version as well. So that is a huge benefit and addition to what was formerly known as support and maintenance, and now Update Subscription. I saw a couple other questions, quite a few about app analytics. So yeah, we believe this is a very exciting feature. I was mentioning as a product manager, and for that matter, anybody who's building an application is out there in the wild and you want to know how people are using it, this is really great information to look at. So there's quite a few questions about it. I'll answer some of them, and then we'll also talk about a few of the others. One of the questions that came up was, is this only hosted by Embarcadero, and can I host it internally? Well, the answer to that is that it is a hosted service from Embarcadero today, and we are looking at potentially integrating it into EMS in the future roadmap, so that that's something that can be hosted on premise. But as of today, it is a hosted service from Embarcadero. Pricing has not been published yet. However, you can log into it today, appanalytics.embarcadero.com, with your EDN login. You'll be able to see any app start event that's generated from applications that you register. And we will be publishing pricing and getting that information out to you and to the sales force here in the next several days, so that you can purchase your plan. The plan is going to be based on the number of events that you intend to store on a monthly basis. And these events can, depending on what you're capturing, if it's standard events or custom events, that's really going to denote the amount of events that you're ultimately going to be tracking. We will have a free tier. Right now, today, that is the free App Start events, and that's something that you can start using today if you want to test it out and or deploy it. Okay, so let me back up here a little bit more. Oh, another question about app analytics was, oh, okay, this is, again, can I store it internally because I have clients that don't want their information out there in the cloud. Okay, thank you for the feature request. Okay, backing up a little bit here as well. So questions about platform presentations. One question here is it going to perform faster than FireMonkey rendered controls?
Yes. If you, it depends. It depends on the control, of course. But for controls like the list, for example, if you render it as a platform control, it will be. It definitely will be a bit faster. That being said, of course, styled is still supported. That's our GPU-driven rendering on FireMonkey that's supported across all 4 platforms, Windows, Mac, iOS, and Android. But for iOS, for some controls, we now have a platform property that you can set, which is one of the things I showed during the session. And if you select platform for those, for example, tedit, tmemo, tlistview, then at runtime it's going to render that control using the underlying operating system.
Right, and it really depends on how you define faster also. Yeah. I mean, your app itself doesn't run faster, but because the control is being rendered by the platform, you're going to get a more native user experience for that control as well. So list view is a good example where there's a very specific feel around how it scrolls, and that's something that end users are going to get the benefit of that platform presentation. Couple questions about beacons and Bluetooth. Do you want to talk generally about that, Serena?
Yeah, so beacons are supported on iOS, Android, and Mac. I know there's a question that came up a little while ago about beacons and Windows. Currently on Windows 8.1, beacons are not supported because Windows doesn't expose the Bluetooth API access to advertising data. So that's one reason, or that's the reason why beacons are not supported on Windows, which is one of the questions that came up. Another question that I saw earlier was how to use UUID, minor, and major values. So you can think of major values as the beacon values to identify a group of beacons. So let's say you are at a trade show and there are 4 exhibit halls and you want to deploy beacons to all 4 exhibit halls, and each exhibit hall has 20 different vendors that are presenting their company within that trade show event. So you would have major values 1 through 4 to identify each exhibit hall, and then minor values of, let's say, 1 through 20 to identify each vendor within that trade show event. And the general rule is that you should have the same UUID and then change the major and minor values according to your needs. And that being said, we also have multiple demos that are included with XE8 that show our Bluetooth support, and the same demos are available for both Object Pascal and C++, and you can find them by going to the mobile samples folder under device sensors and services. There's a Bluetooth and beacon subfolder, and includes a multitude of different beacon demos. Also, it includes a beacon tethering demo as well that shows you how to work with beacons and tethering concurrently. Another question that I saw earlier was about beacons. Are there beacons that support both the iBeacon standard defined by Apple and the AltBeacon standard? Yes, there are multiple beacon vendors today. For example, Radius Networks that has the RAD beacon that support concurrent beacons. So for example, it's a single beacon that supports both the iBeacon and AltBeacon standard.
Thank you, Serena.
Sure.
So yeah, on Windows again, even though Windows 8.1 does have Bluetooth LE support, they are missing support for the advertising aspect of that. So it's a Windows platform issue, not
correct.
A FireMonkey or VCL issue.
Correct.
Speaking of that, Mark, I saw quite a few questions about VCL and any updates, and I just want to make it clear to everybody that anything we do in the RTL, which is shared between FireMonkey and VCL, and there's a lot of stuff that we focus on in that particular library, enables these features in VCL. So Marco, maybe you can take a quick moment to talk about that.
Sure. There is really a lot in the VCL in this release because all VCL developers use the IDE, and there is a lot in the IDE, from get it to the application to the various developer productivity features, to the new T-unit and version control system integration. There are also specific features like the application analytics on the VCL side is really specific to the VCL. It's not a shared component between VCL and FireMonkey because the internal technology of the two libraries is different. So that's a specific VCL component. But as you were saying, and there are other things, there are fixes, there are improvements, but there are also lots of features, for example, the FireDAC features, and even the change in the fields management for the T dataset class. So it's not FireDAC specific, it's for any dataset class. Someone yesterday was claiming a 25% increase on an application based on the client dataset component because of this change at the T field data copy level. So there are really changes that affect everyone, even if they are not VCL specific. And that's true for lots of areas, the HTTP client library and many other things that are part of the system.
Thank you, Marco. Yeah, and one thing to also again reiterate is the extra effort and attention paid on developer productivity features. This is something that every developer using RAD Studio, Delphi, or C++ Builder is going to get value out of, whether you're doing just VCL development or doing mobile development or doing enterprise back-end development within the IDE. A question about native platform presentation on iOS. So the questions have been about what other platforms, etc. Just to follow up on the previous questions. So I'll take this one. So we did a bunch of work in FireMonkey to enable this native platform presentation. This is under the hood type of a work where we utilize the MVC pattern internally to be able to present the user interface using alternative rendering pipelines. And in fact, we still composite the image at the end of the day using various rendering pipelines into one final image. So iOS was the first platform we selected because iOS apps have a very specific look and feel that end users expect. Android is a little looser, if you will. Most end users are used to seeing many different types of experiences on Android. It's not a very specific feel. And same goes largely for the desktop platforms as well. With that said, we do intend to bring native platform presentation to these other platforms in the future as well. But started with iOS and focused on those controls with which there's a lot of movement or specific user experience that we wanted to highlight.
And on that, I wanted to also add to what JT was saying. If you select platform, let's say for T-Edit, and you run that application on Android, it's going to automatically switch to style. So you don't have to worry about making any specific changes if you're deploying it to any other platform. So you can get the benefit on iOS if you select platform, but on all the other platforms, it's still going to render it as a style control, so you don't have to make any changes to your application.
Thank you, Serena.
Oh, Marco, I saw a question about Box2D and VCL support. There was a question about using Box2D.
Yeah, Box2D works on both. Yeah, the library works on both, on all platforms, and it works on both VCL and FireMonkey, so it's not FireMonkey specific. So yeah, it's really usable in a VCL application.
Okay, so now we have some questions I see here around EMS. EMS looks great. What about using it for something like a game? Has been one request. So Mark, you want to take a moment to talk about EMS and general usage?
Yes, in general, EMS is one of the solutions in the area of connectivity from a mobile application. As I mentioned when I answered that question earlier, if you are looking for a public API that scales to millions or hundreds of millions of users, that's not the right solution. EMS is in the enterprise mobility space, has lots of focus on security on mobile, encrypted database, and so it fits in many different scenarios, but probably not the scenarios of high availability. That is better served by backend as a service providers, BaaS providers like Parse and Kimbe that we support in the box, or just pure cloud services like Amazon and Azure that we also support in the box. So there are many different solutions that will depend on the type of scenario. EMS is really meant for enterprise, for database data access, for security, and again also device security of the data on the device. So if you have that type of scenario, it really fits. And as I mentioned in the webinar, if you are building a number of applications around that infrastructure, the cost really becomes negligible because you can use the same architecture and the same user account throughout multiple applications.
Right. So it really, focused particularly on those types of services with those that you would want a user to log in. You want to manage access control to those services. For anonymous usage, it's probably overkill, frankly, for that type of deployment. And then a question about how to license EMS. That is something that you'd want to talk to your local sales partner about, and they can give you some pricing information on that.
I also saw a question about demos. So we have many new demos for the new features in XE8 that you can access via our SourceForge directory. So if you go to sourceforge.net and search for RAD Studio, you will find the RAD Studio demos. There's an XE8 branch there. Of course, the same demos are also installed with the product. So if you go to your Documents, Public Documents folder, and you browse to RAD Studio, you will find many new demos. For example, we have demos for Box2D, we have demos for EMS, we have demos for BaaS, we have demos for beacons and Bluetooth, FireDAC, Interbase. So many new demos that you can access by going to your Documents folder on your machine. These demos are installed with XE8. And of course, alternatively, you can also go to the SourceForge directory online at sourceforge.net and browse to our RAD Studio XE8 repository.
Yeah, that's true. Lots of great content out there for you to learn how to use these features, both in video form, both in source code form, and in available projects for you. So definitely spend some time with those to learn these features. I see several questions about platforms, so I'll go ahead and jump on those. So we'll start with one that came up quite a bit. When are we going to support Linux? So we've published that Linux server-side support is on the roadmap. It's something we are actively working on. It's going to be it's intended to be a supported platform in the future. We don't have a launch date or availability date to share with anyone yet, but it is definitely one that is on the roadmap. Additionally, a question is about Windows 10. Well, as we know, Windows 10 is still in beta or technical preview. And I'll put it another way. We've always supported Windows very well with every release. So this is something that you can expect us to put specific attention on when it becomes generally available, making sure that you can build the best Windows 10 apps out there using Delphi, C++ Builder, and RAD Studio. And the last platform that I see mentioned here quite a bit is, what about running on Intel with Android? And the answer to that is we don't intend, at least in the short term, to build a compiler to support Intel directly on Android. It's a matter of really, frankly, investment and market opportunity. And Intel on Android is still a very small percentage of the overall market share. With that said, we have seen success and people been able to deploy applications on Android systems that include the libhoudini library. Intel is actively supporting that. So if you have issues with any Delphi app, C++ Builder app that does not run on Intel Android and uses, or has, I should say, libhoudini, I believe, I forget which version, KitKat, particular version of KitKat is required or above. Please submit that as a bug to us and we can get that over to Intel to make sure that they're aware of it and that they can try to address it. So that is the current answer today for Android on Intel, which is use libhoudini to run your apps on that platform. Is there a list of bug fixes in XE8?
Yes, I think, Marco, you posted a link I saw on your Twitter feed.
Yeah, there is a document on I think EDN, as usual, that has a link of bug fixes. That's been circulating yesterday and today. We had a discussion. I think I counted 364 fixes, and these are bugs reported by customers. They're not like internally discovered bugs on new features. These are bugs on existing features that have been reported by customers. Someone else was saying 370. Anyway, it's significantly above 350 bugs fixed compared to the latest public update, which is XE7 update 1.
Thank you. I see some follow-up questions to the platforms that I'll go ahead and touch. One is is there a tutorial on how to use libhoudini or some information? There is information out there on the web. Basically, you don't need to do anything additional other than asking your end users to make sure they have a certain version of Android, because libhoudini should be part of that. I'll do a blog post on that once I get the exact version. Again, I believe it's a certain version of KitKat or above, so it's fully supported in Lollipop. Additionally, someone asked, what about Windows Phone? And the answer to that is, again, along the lines of investment as well as market opportunity, and Windows Phone is, generally speaking, losing market share as opposed to growing market share. So it's not a very viable platform for us to invest into supporting that today. With that said, we'll continue to support Windows desktop operating systems, server operating systems, and services, particularly those that run on Intel-based hardware. Okay, let's see. Wow, there is a lot of questions. I'm glad that everybody's very interested in what we're doing here. Oh, I'll tackle this question right now because this has come up a few times. So people wanted to really understand what we mean when we say that updates will only be available to those on update subscription. So in the past, with support and maintenance, there really were three primary benefits of being part of that program. One is, of course, access to new releases, which is a huge cost savings over time. The second is access to support incidents. So you get 3 support incidents per developer. And the third, and it's really the maintenance part, would be getting access to updates and hotfixes. Well, historically, yes, we have offered these more broadly or more publicly, but with update subscription, with the additional investment we're making also into supporting older versions, it is going to be required that an update subscription plan is in place in order for you to get access to any new updates. And this includes things like your traditional update 1, but we'll also include things like beta hotfixes. So we'll be able to fix issues, make them available to everyone very quickly, and roll those up into future updates. And we'll also be fixing issues in older versions, as I mentioned. So this allows you to be able to stay on a particular platform for longer than others. So these are huge benefits. These are huge investments being made by Embarcadero as well, but it does require that you're an active update subscription user. There was a question about from a recharge user about update subscription. So in that case, you need to renew your recharge, and you'll have an option to get into update subscription at that time. And as well, if you already had bought, we will offer that the ability to do that within the next few weeks so that you're not locked out of that opportunity. A couple questions about Get It. Kind of, I guess these are more future questions. One is this going to become a broader marketplace? Two, is it something that we can host internally? So I'll try to answer a few of those, and Luis, feel free to jump in if you'd like. But today we're looking at it, or we're delivering it as really a package manager. We're going to be managing and selecting which of those packages will go in to Get It. We're starting with the Turbo pack. These are a collection of libraries that historically many of you have been using, but over years have been difficult to find or get updated. So we've had them updated, and we've made these available via Get It. We intend to put more and more content into Get It over time, and you'll be seeing this being used as a regular distribution channel for components and add-ons and even features in the IDE going forward. Do we intend for this to become a broader marketplace? The answer is yeah, we do. So you'll be seeing us, again, putting a lot of investment into this and really trying to give you a lot of value, particularly with regard to finding and utilizing third-party components and libraries from within the Get It marketplace in the future. So while I'm looking for a couple other questions, Marco, Luis, Serena, is there any particular question that you saw brought up that you'd like to answer?
Oh yeah, one question came up about the point of sale interface, which is shown in the different hero shots on the RAD Studio XE8 pages and also in the slide deck. I am planning on making that available. It's not available yet as a download, but it will be available soon. Another question came up about the Employee Manager demo that was shown with the multi-device preview functionality in XE8, and that demo is available for download. I posted a link earlier. However, if you go to community.embarcadero.com and you go to our blogs section and you select me, Serena DuPont, from the blogs drop-down menu, you can scroll down the list and you'll find the related blog post and demo that you can download as well, right from within the that blog post. And again, it's at community.embarcadero.com, and we have our blogs there where you can access the different blogs that we're putting out, and of course also the related download link for this particular HR Manager sample application.
Quick before anybody else jumps in, I see some confusion around Recharge. Recharge as a program is no longer available. Update subscription supersedes that program. However, if you have been a renewing Recharge customer, we'll continue to honor that in letting you renew into the next version. But I highly recommend you look at the renewal into update subscription approach so that you can get on the new plan and get those additional benefits as well. Marco and Luis, any particular questions that you see in there that you'd like to take a moment to answer?
Well, not for me. Marco?
Yeah, nothing in particular. Most of them are really technical or very specific questions that we can handle directly, or of course feel free to email us for further information and details that is not available in the doc wiki or in the online documents describing the product.
Right. So let me just take another quick scan here to see if there's anything really critical that we'd like to get answered for you today. And otherwise, if you have any last questions for us, we'd be happy to try to get to those here in the next few minutes. Okay, I think we've covered pretty much. Oh, here's the one that I'd like to address. What about C++ 11 features for C++ Builder? So C++ 11 is available in 64-bit Windows and Android and iOS. 32-bit Windows, we're working on a version there. So if you have a particular interest in that feature, why don't you send me an email directly, jt@embarcadero.com. I'd be happy to connect you in with the early betas on that one as well. Okay, well with that, again, we thank everyone for joining us today for a first look at RAD Studio XE8, and which is now generally available as of Tuesday, April 7th. And we thank you for attending and for your great questions and thoughtful comments, and look forward to hearing more from you in the future. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.